Celine Sciamma is a very exciting filmmaker for contemporary cinema with her more recent release, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I absolutely adored. I took the time and went through all of her filmographies, except for a few of which I couldn't find, but I tried my best. Celine Sciamma is a French author known for a minimalistic weaving of characters and stories, elongated moments that last far beyond the credits, and the silence she incorporates into her work that makes so much noise. Her work explores the idea of sexuality of women, in which we usually follow a girl who hasn't figured out who to be yet in society. We often get to take a peek behind their gender fluidity and identity, taking the form of coming-of-age stories through self-exploration. So for the second episode of the Filmmaker Spotlight, this is Celine Sciamma and everything she has done, at least the ones I've watched. And don't worry about spoilers, I won't. Starting with her feature debut, which already got her the spotlight from many award nominations, and within the first 5 minutes, I was sitting there like, hold on. Is that Adele Hay? It is. It is. They've been working together since more than a decade ago, and just so you know, Adele and Sciamma are in fact partners. So Water Lilies follows mainly three central characters, Marie, Anne, and Florine, as they undergo sexual and emotional realizations as you do in teenage years. It sets where synchronized swimming is basically the story world, and you can already tell some of the nuances Sciamma puts into her work and what she's trying to communicate. The sense of self-loss, the confusion, the expectation, the embarrassment, and the over-the-top makeup and smiles that are expected from women. Because synchronized swimming is one of the only sports that are female specific. Only women practice it, so it becomes a beautiful metaphor in which the girls are forced to put up a happy face on the surface, yet below is one of the most physically demanding activities ever. It shines a light on what they consider important in a very specific period of their lives and what they consider valuable, whether it's what other people think of them or the other way around. And the way of homing these themes down is through vulnerability and pain. Following Water Lilies 1 year later, Sciamma put out a short film called Pauline, and it is on YouTube, so you can go check it out right now. It's very short. It's just the character Pauline almost directly addressing the camera, giving a monologue about her falling in love with a girl and then being humiliated and pushed away by the people around her. It's all one take with an ending that was so incredible, and also I have a suspicion that they might have shot it in the same bedroom they shot Water Lilies in. I don't know, they look awfully very similar, I don't know. So for Sciamma's second feature, Tomboy, in 2011, which gave her an even bigger spotlight, Sciamma takes us back to before the teenage years. We follow a girl, Laura, who is, as the title suggests, a tomboy. When her family moves into a new neighborhood, she finds herself pretending to be a boy in front of the group of kids she quickly befriends. While a hint of romance arises with one of the neighborhood girls, Lisa, Laura has to find a way to balance her double identity, one of which herself, the other who she self-named Mikkel. Already, I think the filmmaking is obviously a lot more mature, even though I don't think I was as emotionally invested in this one as I was in Water Lilies. It also really reminded me of the film We the Animals, which came out in 2018, another small indie that you should definitely go check it out if you have time. Because yes, Tomboy focuses on what one has to do just to feel involved and to fit in. It reads more of a childhood story that can potentially lead to something else in the teenage years and eventually into adulthood. And this could be transgender identity or homosexuality. It is extremely intimate, personal, emotional, and sometimes even political, which we will talk about that later, but at the end of the day, it is told through the lens of an individual, how she views the world and how she adapts to it, and Tomboy couldn't be a better example of that. 3 years later, Sciamma put out Girlhood in 2014, which is personally my least favorite work of hers, even though a lot of people seem to think it is one of her better ones. Unlike all her previous films, Girlhood is told from a perspective of outside in, instead of inside out. In Water Lilies and Tomboy, the world and the story are developed from one subject expanding outward. In Girlhood, Sciamma developed the subject from the moving story world inward. With that foundation in place, the film is so wildly different. It is her loudest film without a doubt. Everything from the music choices, the overlapping dialogue, and how the characters are constantly fighting with one another. It is supposed to be dirty and vile and violent, and Girlhood absolutely accomplished that. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just a matter of personal taste. Sciamma turned to the minorities in France because she believes that they are always disregarded. So in a way, Girlhood is probably the most political film she has ever made. We follow Mariam, who lives in the outskirts of Paris in a ghetto neighborhood. As she joins a girl gang, we enter a ride through classism, sexism, and racism. Though I understand it is about an individual who maneuvers through the world and the focus is on her journey into the woods and coming back. I don't know why Sciamma made her main character this unlikable after the first act. It's almost like ruining the audience, but doesn't reward us in a sense. It has a really good ending shot. The last shot she landed on is fantastic. And leaving this one, because Girlhood is such a political film, Sciamma's director of photography was able to push the limit of dynamics of the lighting, in which the color palette produces a gloomy effect with excessive blue and green, a color palette that would have been impossible for the whiter skins, which I find extremely interesting. 2 years later, Sciamma did take writing credit in 2 separate features, one for Being 17 and the other one for My Life as a Zucchini, which both I enjoyed. To break it down quickly, the reason why the director of Being 17 wanted Sciamma to co-write the film was because, quote, the importance of adolescence as a theme in her work and his admiration for the clarity of the narrative line in Tomboy, end quote. The film also explores sexuality and identity. It was fairly fast moving. If I have to bet, I would think the average scene length of Being 17 has gotta be about 1.5 pages long, which is quite short. My Life as a Zucchini, on the other hand, tells a story about a young boy in an orphanage and the various stories these children are abandoned. Also a very touching film, really short, but it does hit my emotions good. So let's jump forward 3 years and talk about a film that came out last year in 2019, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This is it. I don't think I can say or add anything that hasn't already been said about this film. I think it's Sciamma's masterpiece and it's also my favorite of hers by far. And I'm gonna have to let this portrait fever I have ride out before I make a decision, because this might dethrone The Farewell as my #1 film of 2019. The film follows a painter who's secretly painting a portrait of a woman who is expected to be wedded. This is a script that only took Sciamma 3 months to write. But she thought about it for 3 years beforehand, right? With that being said, Tomboy took her 2 weeks to write and 20 days to shoot, so I guess she's very good at it. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is essentially a 2-hour flashback as the main character Marianne recalls her memory, which tied in so perfectly with the ending. I don't have to say much about this anymore, but I would like to say the reason why I love this film so much is because of the anger. I always feel this wrath seeping through the screen. This is such an angry movie, and in many ways as loud as a thunder. The way we see the rage of these women just builds and builds from start to finish, and as Sciamma said, we are obsessed with the way they start and maybe already haunted by how they will end, which is where the rage is spawning off from. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a painting on a canvas. Everything inside that canvas is the essential that is called loneliness, and everything outside of that canvas should only be hypotheses. And that's exactly the reason why Sciamma never frames her fantastic woman walking out of the frame. Above all, watching her work from start to finish, as different as these films are in tone, character, and story worlds, the one commonality you can find is the fact that they are about women. More specifically, women's relationship with other men, women's relationship with other women, and most of all, women's relationship with themselves, which makes Celine Sciamma one of the best artists working in cinema today.